everyone, my name is Millie and welcome to The Performing Arts and Me. If you're new to my videos, welcome. I'm currently studying at London Studio Centre on a theatre dance degree programme on the musical theatre pathway, and from September 2021 to May 2022 I was at Bird College on their pre-professional foundation year course, and I make videos about performing arts, my general life experiences and things like that, so if you're interested please do subscribe. Now in today's video I'm going to be sharing some things that you might want to do to help you prepare for the monologue section of a drama school audition. I'm talking about auditions for musical theatre related courses at places like drama school, but this might be helpful if you're preparing an audition monologue for something else instead. Now before, during and after my auditions I've watched videos on YouTube relating to performing arts and things like that. So some of the things that I'm going to share might have originally come from someone else on YouTube. Some of the channels that I've watched previously include Auditioning for Drama School, Lucy Stewart-Adams and Georgie Ashford's channel. Now I can't 100% remember everything that was in their videos, and so I can't 100% say that I agree with everything that's in their videos because I can't remember everything. However, you might want to go and have a look at their channels and other videos on YouTube to see what other people have said about preparing audition monologues for drama school auditions. Okay, so let's get started. My first point on my list is to read the play. I think this is really important. The play is where the monologue is from. That will give you the context of what's happened to your character. If you just look at a monologue and you haven't read the play, you might not realise where your characters come from. Without reading the play you probably won't know as much about the character, about the storyline, about the setting that your character's in, about what's happened just before it. So yeah, reading the play I think is really important in order to give you an understanding of the character and the monologue itself, rather than it just being a piece of text that someone is saying. Reading the play will help give you the context to that. My next point is I would suggest doing some research. So this will probably depend on the play and the text and the monologue as to what you actually need to research. But yeah, so for example, if the play is about a historical event that you don't know about, or you don't know as much as you feel you'd like to, then that might be something you want to research. Also, if it's from a different time period, that might be something you want to research. Also different locations, if it's set somewhere that you've never been, or it's set in a particular place, as in a particular country, or it's set in, I don't know, let's say it's set in a castle and you've never been in a castle before, things like that. If it's also set in a different class, if it's about, yeah, these might be things that you might want to research. My next point is that I would suggest that you find out what the words in your monologue means if you don't understand them. So it might be that there are words that are related to the context of the play that you don't understand, or it might just be words that you've heard before or that you maybe haven't heard before, but that you don't have a clear understanding of what they actually mean. So I would suggest looking those up and working out the meaning of the sentences as well, because even if you know the words, making sure you understand what the sentence is, if it's a joke, understanding what the joke is, things like that. This is particularly the case with classical monologues. There might be some words in there or abbreviations that you might not understand, so do the best that you can to research it. My next point is to cut the monologue if required. When you're cutting monologues I would suggest speaking it through and timing it, because normally they give a time rather than a number of words or something. So yeah, I would say try speaking it through, timing it and then cutting the monologue. And then after you've cut your monologue, that would be when I would suggest learning it. So doing the research first and then cutting it and then learning it means that you can be informed about what you're cutting and what is important and what isn't important, but also that you don't learn the full version and then have to learn the cut. So I would suggest doing it that way around, but it's up to you. However, that being said, it may be that you require different lengths of monologue for different auditions, in which case you might choose to make a couple of cuts of the same monologue, in which case you'd then have to learn both cuts. And with that I'd just say make sure you know in your head at what point you cut and where you go to for each cut, so that you don't start mixing them up. Okay, so my next points are kind of related to working on the actual monologue itself. So working on the storyline side of it, so you might want to work out what the arc of the story is, where the changes in emotions are. Also looking at things like what the playwright has said about the character, about the context, etc. But then also what you have decided about the character, filling in the gaps of what the playwright maybe hasn't put in the play, because I think it's important to know it in your head so that you can portray it to the audience. Also working out what your character wants, how they're trying to get it and things like that. and also who you're speaking to, and therefore like deciding where you're going to direct your focus. Are you speaking to a person, or are you speaking to the audience, or are you speaking to, like, are you just speaking your thoughts aloud? Looking at those things and then picking a focus point or focal points for the monologue. Another thing I would say that you might want to do is work on like the spoken, like the voice elements of the monologue. So at London Studio Centre, I currently have voice classes, and we also had them at Bird when I was on the foundation year. And this is like spoken voice, and it's to do with like correct use of breath, articulation, etc, etc, etc. I think spoken voice classes can also cover things like accent work, and we did a bit on like voiceover work and things like that. But going back to the use of breath, articulation, things like that, I would say that those are the elements that are maybe worth looking at for your monologue. Now, I'm not qualified to give you voice lessons, and there's like lots to look into with that, but I would say just for your audition monologues, making sure it's clear to the audience and making sure they understand the words and that they're clear, but also giving emotion behind the words, and maybe experimenting with how you can use your voice in a way that gives emotion, whilst also making the message and the meaning of the words clear to the audience as well. My next suggestion is to play with different ways of delivering it. I think it's important to play with different ways of delivering your monologue so it doesn't get like stale, because you'll be practicing your monologue and you'll also be like performing it in auditions and things like that, so you might end up saying it quite a few times, and I feel like you can get stuck in a rhythm of the way you're saying it, and also at this point I get angry, at this point I get sad, at this point I shout, blah 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 blah. So every once in a while, maybe like do a different way of doing your monologue, or force yourself to say it in a different rhythm, or force yourself to emphasize different things, things like that, just to change it up a little bit, which maybe might make it more interesting for you. You might discover, oh, actually that's a better way of saying it, I quite like that. And also keeping you connected to your character and the emotions and the intentions, rather than just saying it the same way each time. Going back to the voice related element, it might be worth you having a look at the text of the monologue and noting things like, where's the punctuation, what punctuation is it, noticing like if you've got loads of really short words, like why is the playwright put them in there, and just having a little bit of a think about the actual text itself, and then seeing whether any of that would affect your acting choices. Okay, so going back to your cuts, I would say after you've worked on your monologue, it might be worth you timing it again, because I found that mine tended to increase in time, because I was adding in pauses, I was thinking as my character rather than just reading the words on the page. So you might need to time it, and you might find that you need to cut out a little bit more, or you might find you've really sped up and you actually want to add a little bit back in. But it might be that it's fine, but I just would suggest timing it again after you've worked on it for a bit. In fact, it might be an idea recording yourself, so that you can find out, oh, is this actually really slow? Or maybe performing it for a trusted friend, parent. If you've got a teacher or a drama school teacher or an acting teacher, you might want to perform it for them and get their feedback. But just it might be worth reviewing your timing after you've worked on it. Okay, my next point, and kind of final point, but it's kind of two in one, is choosing what you're going to wear and practicing in it. I just think it's a good idea to choose the clothes ahead of time so that you know what you're going to be wearing, and that's not something you need, and practicing in it just so that you feel comfortable doing it in those clothes. However, I just wanted to point out that it might be that your monologues and songs are done without time to change in between at some of the auditions. At least a couple of my auditions, I did the song and monologue almost like back to back, like I didn't go out of the room, so there wasn't really time to change. So when thinking about what you're going to wear, consider that you might be doing your song and your monologue in the same thing, but it might depend on the audition. You might have time to change, and if you would like to know that information, I would suggest asking the school, or it might say if they send you an audition running order or something, whether you'd have time to get changed. But if you would like to know and it doesn't say, then I would suggest contacting the school, but you might be happy to stay in the same clothes anyway, in which case I guess it wouldn't really matter to you whether there was a gap in between or not. But if you want to know, I would suggest contacting the schools. Okay, and that is everything I wanted to say in today's video. I hope it's been helpful, and if it has, please do give it a like to let me know. And don't forget to subscribe so you don't miss my future videos. I'd love to know in the comments if you have any video requests to give me ideas of what you're enjoying and what you'd like to see more of. So yeah, please leave those down below if you have any. And thank you very much for watching. Bye!